Hi there, this is Lee from IELTS Master, and this is an advanced grammar lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to use whereas in IELTS speaking and writing. This will be a good lesson, so I hope you're looking forward to it. First, let's define whereas. What does whereas mean? Well, first, it's a subordinating conjunction. This is the word type. What does subordinating conjunction mean? Well, that's a very good question. We'll come back to subordinating in just a moment, but what is a conjunction? A conjunction is something that links two things together. In this case, whereas links two parts of a sentence together. So you don't use it with a period or a full stop, you use it with a comma. What is the purpose of whereas? Well, it's used to highlight an important difference between two similar things or facts. So we're using whereas to compare and contrast. Compare and contrast, very important concepts for IELTS writing and IELTS speaking. What are things that are similar to whereas? We have while, which has the same usage and meaning. So you can substitute whereas for while. But while has several meanings. While can be used for time. I ate ice cream while I was walking. That's not the same one. That's not this while. It's the other while. And we'll look at that in just a moment. And also on the other hand. And this has the same meaning, but the usage is a little bit different. So here's an easy example of whereas. I enjoy the mountains, whereas my wife prefers the ocean. We want to highlight an important difference between two similar things. I enjoy the mountains, whereas my wife prefers the ocean. I enjoy the mountains while my wife prefers the ocean. I enjoy the mountains. On the other hand, my wife prefers the ocean. Did you get the meaning? I think so. I think you got it. Let's go on next onto how to use whereas. So, how to use whereas. We'll come back to the grammar note in just a moment, but first we have the meaning. We have part A, so this is the first part, and then comma, whereas, and then part B. Also, we can do whereas part A, comma, part B. And in terms of grammar, we have an independent clause and then a comma, and then the dependent whereas clause. And also, the other way of doing it is dependent whereas clause and then a comma and then an independent clause. So what is a dependent clause and an independent clause? Well, an independent clause can stand on its own. It's its own sentence. You can put a full stop and that's all good, no problem. And of course, all clauses have a subject and a predicate, a subject and a verb. So you have the noun or the noun phrase and then the verb and any kind of details you want to add to that. All clauses have this, but an independent clause can be its own sentence. Dependent clause, not really. The dependent clause needs some help. When you put an independent clause and a dependent clause together, it becomes a complex sentence. Yes, a complex sentence. If you remember the band scores for IELTS writing, it references using complex structures, right? And so this is one such complex structure that you can use. Let's take a look at some more easy examples. We have some countries only have one official language, comma, whereas others have many. So this clause, some countries only have one official language. This is the independent clause. You can see the sentence is green. And up above in the grammar, we also have the green independent clause and dependent whereas clause. And up above, part A, comma, whereas part B. That's all the green. The blue is a separate one. But this sentence, some countries only have one official language, comma, this is the independent clause. This can be a sentence. If we said, some countries only have one official language, that's a sentence, no problem. Comma, whereas others have many. Whereas others have many, period, that's no good. That's not a finished sentence. So that's the dependent whereas clause. Another easy example. Whereas some countries have many official languages, comma, others only have one. This is the exact same sentence. We're just restructuring it. We're changing the structure of it to use it in a different way. Both of these are perfectly acceptable. Both are complex structures, and both are excellent for your IELTS speaking and your IELTS writing. Let's move on, and I'm going to give you a lot of examples of how to use whereas in different sentences in different contexts. Let's start with speaking. When I was younger, I really liked reading fantasy novels. I really enjoyed reading fantasy novels. Whereas nowadays, I'm more into nonfiction, like biographies. Next, I think that whereas people in Tokyo tend to live in apartments, in more rural areas, they often live in single-story houses. Ooh, interesting. We're putting I think that before the whereas. And notice that if you go back maybe 30 seconds and look at all the structures, we still have the same green and the same blue. So the green, we have whereas after the comma in the middle of the sentence, and the blue, we have whereas in the beginning of the sentence. All right? Next one, green. When you watch a sporting event at home, you can't really feel the energy. Whereas in the actual sports stadium, the electricity in the atmosphere can be incredible. Also, we have whereas after the comma, and we're comparing these two things. We're comparing watching sports at home and watching sports in the actual stadium. Last one for speaking. Whereas people used to celebrate holidays with their family members, today people often go out to parties with their friends. It's a different world. Okay, another one. And this time, again, we have whereas in the beginning of the sentence. Next, let's look at some writing task 1. We're going to focus on academic writing task 1 for now. Coal is predicted to increase steadily to 31Q in 2030, whereas after 2014, gas will remain stable at 25Q. This is from Cambridge IELTS 9, so this is not my sentence. This is from an IELTS examiner who wrote this as a model answer. But let's switch this sentence to the blue style with whereas in the beginning. Whereas coal is predicted to increase steadily to 31Q in 2030, gas will remain stable at 25Q after 2014. All right? Next, national and international fixed line calls grew steadily over the period shown, whereas local fixed line calls peaked in 1999 before declining. All right, next. What's this? We have a quiz question. How do you make the previous sentence into the blue version? So how do you take whereas and move it to the beginning of the sentence? I'm not going to tell you the answer yet. I'd like you to try and do it as your action step and do it in the comments, but we might have one more quiz question coming up, so be ready for that. Next, we're going to look at writing task 2 and some more examples of how to use whereas. The first one is, adolescents tend to be thought of as impulsive and dramatic, whereas adults are seen as more mature and aware of the consequences of their actions. And remember, you can use while instead of whereas if you'd like here. Quiz question number 2. It's back so quickly. How do you make the previous sentence into the blue version? What do you think? How can we take whereas and move it to the beginning? Good luck. Next sentence. Some people have suggested that it would be beneficial for high school students to do unpaid community service, whereas others feel that this would be entirely ineffective. And if we change the sentence around, doing the same thing but putting whereas in the beginning. Whereas some people have suggested that it would be beneficial for high school students to do unpaid community service, others feel that this would be entirely ineffective. So we essentially have the same sentence, just the placement of whereas changes how we do it. You do need to be careful if you use some kind of referencing in the sentence to make sure that you have your referencing correct. But you can use whereas either in the beginning or in the middle of the sentence. Both are okay. And if you have a whereas sentence and you want to do a different type of sentence somewhere else later on, you can use while instead, and no one will know the difference, even though these are the same sentence structures. Really nice. And a good way to include two complex sentence structures, or at least one complex sentence structure with two different words in your writing. All right, that's it for this lesson on whereas. Your action steps are, first, to answer the 2 quiz questions in the comment section below, and second, try to use whereas at least 5 times in the next 3 days. Good luck. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and seeing how you did with this. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it was valuable for you. I hope it was useful for you. If you'd like to see more videos from IELTS Master, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at youtube.com/IELTSmaster or IELTS-master.com. I hope you have a fantastic day.